At the end of Maple Street, where the road slowly became quiet and empty, there was a house that everyone avoided. It was not broken or dangerous, and it did not look frightening at first glance. But there was something about it that made people feel uncomfortable. The paint was old, the windows were tall and still, and the small garden in front of it had not been touched for many years. No one ever saw anyone enter or leave the house, yet it never felt completely empty. When I moved to Maple Street, I noticed the house on my very first day. I was 27 years old, tired, and starting my life again after many failures. I did not choose this street because I loved it. I chose it because it was cheap, quiet, and far from everything I wanted to forget. Every morning I walked past the house on my way to work, and every evening I passed it again on my way back. I tried not to stare, but my eyes always moved toward it. It felt like the house was watching the street, silently observing everyone who passed by. One evening, while standing by my window, I noticed something strange. At exactly 10:30, a light turned on in one of the upstairs windows of the house. The light was soft, warm, and steady. It stayed on for hours and then disappeared before morning. The next night, the same thing happened. And the night after that, again. There were no cars, no visitors, no sound, only the light. I asked my neighbor, an elderly woman who had lived on the street for many years, about the house. The moment I mentioned it, her face changed. She told me not to think about it and not to go near it. Her voice was calm, but her eyes showed fear. That was when I realized the house was not just old. It carried a story no one wanted to remember. A few days later, I found a letter in my mailbox. There was no stamp and no address, only my name written clearly on the envelope. Inside, there was a single sentence: "You notice things others ignore." My hands trembled as I read it. I looked around the street, but no one was there. That night, the light in the house turned on again, brighter than before, and for the first time, I felt certain that whoever was inside knew I was watching. I tried to forget about it, but curiosity is stronger than fear. One night, unable to sleep, I walked slowly toward the end of the street. The air felt heavy, and the silence was almost painful. When I reached the gate, I stopped. My heart was beating fast, and I felt foolish for coming. Then, without warning, the front door of the house opened. Inside, the house was warm and clean. The walls were covered with books, papers, and handwritten notes. Every surface seemed to hold a sentence, a thought, or a quiet observation about life. The place felt alive, not abandoned. In the center of the room sat an elderly woman with calm eyes and white hair. She smiled gently, as if she had been expecting me. She spoke my name, and at that moment, all my fear turned into confusion. She explained that her name was Eleanor, and that she had lived in this house for many years. She was not hiding. She was watching. Eleanor told me that people reveal themselves every day through their habits, their words, and their silence. She said most people are too busy to notice, but those who watch carefully can see the truth. She wrote letters not to scare people, but to remind them of things they already knew deep inside. Some people were afraid of her words, so they chose to forget her instead. She told me she was old now and tired. The house, she said, did not belong to her anymore. It belonged to the ones who paid attention. Before I left, she handed me a notebook and asked me to continue what she had started. To observe, to listen, and to understand without judging. When I stepped outside, the street felt different, lighter. The light in the upstairs window turned off that night and never turned on again. Days passed, then weeks, and the house remained quiet. People still avoided it, but I understood now that the house was never the problem. Fear was. I began writing in the notebook every day. I watched people, listened to conversations, and learned more about myself than I ever expected. Sometimes, late at night, I stand at my window and look at the house at the end of the street. It is still there, silent and patient. And sometimes, I turn on a light upstairs, not to scare anyone, but to remind myself that some houses do not hide secrets. They reveal truths that people are not ready to face.